When Luffy first takes center stage inside of a barrel on Alvida's ship, he already has a lot going for him. Without any obvious training, over the course of the entire East Blue arc, Luffy defeats enemy after enemy with nothing but the aid of his Gum Gum fruit powers. In fact, it isn't until the Alabasta arc that we see Luffy defeated by a major villain, forcing him to recover, strategize, or train, and enter the fray again. Prior to then, he defeated such villains as Don Krieg, Arlong, Kuro, and even Alvida, all notorious pirates. He even got the best of Smoker in a pinch. But what made Luffy's base power so formidable to defeat all of these characters when he first broke free from the barrel on Alvida's ship? The answer to that question is simple: training. Prior to getting locked inside of a barrel, something Luffy had to do on account of his original boat getting sunk before the barrel was retrieved by the Alvida pirates, Luffy did a lot of training. As a child, he began his training with Ace and Sabo. Brothers of bond, they fought and trained with each other to get stronger. After Sabo disappeared, it was Luffy and Ace that trained together, knowing that someday soon, they'd be pirates who'd need to be strong. On their island in the East Blue, there were countless other opportunities to increase their strength. The Don Don family bandits were most likely also a source of some training for him, as Don Don was Luffy's caretaker, in addition to the occasional pirate that found themselves on Luffy's island. Yet Don Don wasn't the only caretaker of Luffy that he most likely fought against. Luffy's grandfather, Vice Admiral Garp, who regularly chastised him for wanting to be a pirate, was also a source of fight for him, as he would constantly attempt to get the better of his grandfather. And although there isn't much in the way of hard evidence of this type of relationship when the red-haired pirates lived in the East Blue, Luffy most likely sought them out to improve his skills when he was very young. Not to mention his inadvertent consumption of the Gum Gum fruit gave him some unique versatility in battle and forced him to master his new Devil Fruit abilities, as he was not very good at utilizing them when he first got his powers. Finally, right before he set out on his own journey, after years of training with Ace on his island, Ace set out on his own pirate journey 3 years prior. While he waited, Luffy again trained, working on his Gum Gum abilities and fighting the various beasts that lived on his island, until it was time for him to shove off. These are the things that Luffy did prior to escaping from that barrel that made him so formidable when he stepped foot on the pirate scene. But what's more impressive is how much foresight it takes to prepare that way. When you have a sight set on the horizon, when you know that the life of your dreams is out there in the future, you do everything you can in the present to prepare for it. You fight smaller fights to prepare yourself for the bigger ones. You sort through your baggage so that you're light enough to begin your journey. You capture in your heart and mind the vision of what you want most before it even materializes before you. This is what Luffy did, to the extent that when his journey finally started, even though he had the toughest days of his life ahead of him, he was already most of who he needed to be to see his dream realized. All of this just for the time he was ready to push away from shore. Zoro the Pirate Hunter, laying on a cross, no food to eat, there for the sin of protecting others. Zoro has a very interesting morality. In only the first few episodes of One Piece do we see him completely alone. That is, doing things on his own accord. Not for his captain, not for his crew. In these moments, we learn some very interesting things about him. Zoro, a man known as a demon, as a vicious beast as the Pirate Hunter, in his first on-screen moments is a person, despite his reputation as one who slays and captures pirates for bounties, who has a deep sense of humanity, a humanity that is even greater than his ambition, or perhaps the vision behind his ambition. For someone so strong and capable of achieving or taking whatever he wants from the world, it is strange that in this story he instead plays by the rules. When he goes to help the little girl and her mother who was threatened by the Marines, namely Helmeppo, deciding to endure 30 days on a cross for all of their lives, he very well could have left. Zoro was very well strong enough to even defeat Captain Morgan on his own. Certainly, he could have subdued the Marines. But he trusted enough in their authority to play by their rules for the sake of someone else, even at the expense of his own dream. As someone who made a promise to become the world's strongest swordsman, it would have been easy for him, even understandable for him, to abandon his trial, agreeing to it and then disappearing in order to pursue his dream. His incarceration, his abuse at the hands of the Marines in order for him and that family to be free was no insurance against something happening to him, something that would keep him from pursuing his dream, to be the greatest swordsman. Yet he did it anyway. And it begs the question, why would someone who has the power to defeat his enemy endure their abuse? Why would someone who is stronger submit to an authority that would put him in bondage in the first place? Ultimately, the truth may be the answer has to do with how lost he is on his own. It is often a joke about Zoro that he's often confused, and you don't want to let him walk around on his own because he'll get lost and he'll lose his way. Yet I think it's reasonable to say that the Zoro without a captain, the Zoro that was a pirate hunter alone, is not just lost as a navigator, but lost as a person. Zoro wanted to see his dream completed, but his answer to becoming the best swordsman and facing the strongest opponent was executed through hunting and fighting, pirate after pirate, until he gets strong enough to defeat the strongest swordsman there is. But what we know about Zoro is that through the Straw Hats, through Luffy, he gained access to a dream, his own dream, in a way that he couldn't have experienced on his own. Zoro has great ambition and great drive and determination as someone who would endure 30 days on a cross for the sake of someone else, knowing that his will is strong enough to get him through the trial in order to reach his dream. But what often happens when we have a dream and no path, when we have hope without light, we end up martyring ourselves over causes that aren't our own. We know that with the Straw Hats, Zoro had the opportunity to face the greatest swordsman in the entire world, Hawkeye Mihawk. He even had the opportunity to train under Hawkeye during the 2-year time skip. Yet without the Straw Hats, he may never have met Hawkeye when he did, and he wouldn't have known him to even ask him for an apprenticeship. And even if Zoro had met Hawkeye, without Luffy and the Straw Hats, there's a great chance that their first encounter would have been his last, because when Zoro was first defeated by Mihawk, it was the dedication to Luffy that pushed him forward, that kept him alive and kept him fighting.
Luffy! 不安にさせたかよ。俺が世界一の剣豪にくらいならねえと、お前が困るんだよな。俺はもう二度と負けねえから絶対にもう俺は負けねえ
Zoro's way, his nature, who he is on his own, is all about grit. He isn't clever enough or doesn't know enough to find out all the answers to his problems, but he's willing to barter, to submit, to wait, to endure, just for the sake of a dream he doesn't know how to make real. For someone who made a career out of fighting pirates and capturing them for their bounties, an ally of the world's authorities, he quickly turned his head away from them when he realized that what they were offering him wasn't real, and that they had no intention of allowing him to complete his quest, to finish his trial. And in that moment, he became a pirate. What's so interesting about Zoro, beyond his inherent goodness, his inherent desire to see no harm come to those who can't protect themselves, is the fact that he's quite like many of us. Oftentimes in life we grow up with the idea that there's a certain authority that will guide us, that someone's rule or will can see us to our most happy future. And as a result, oftentimes we end up losing sight of our own dreams. We're aimless and we hack away at barriers that shouldn't exist, that we shouldn't even be standing in front of. Like Zoro. He really didn't have a clue how to become the world's strongest swordsman, and until he realized that the authorities that he was trusting in, that he had submitted to, were lying to him, he would have followed their justice. But he found someone in Luffy who can help direct him, who had the passion and conviction to help him see his dream realized one step at a time. And often, like Zoro, in order for us to reach our dreams, we have to turn away from authorities that we trusted in, that we martyred ourselves over, when oftentimes they had no interest in seeing our dream realized, like overbearing parents, broken school systems, and dead-end jobs. And for that dream, we turn to a new light, something that is bright enough to lead us to our future, the future we choose. Zoro's humanity is akin to every one of us who have an innate sense of goodness, of rightness, who have had to do terrible, difficult work, not knowing of a better way, making our way through life with grit alone, and have submitted to authorities that have no capacity to serve us, and would have us martyr ourselves rather than see our dreams fulfilled. That is, until we found a light bright enough to lead us down the right path. Have you ever had a dream that you wanted so much that you wanted so much you can do anything? Luffy did. Luffy's dream to be the king of the pirates, to find the One Piece, is a lofty desire. Some believe it's dangerous, some believe it's just wishful thinking. And such a treasure, even if it exists, is unattainable. And perhaps the One Piece is attainable, and perhaps you don't even need the One Piece to be considered the king of the pirates, and perhaps Luffy's dream is wishful thinking. But it is his dream. It begs the question of why. Why would a no-name pirate who has no cause to believe they're capable of defeating the world set out to sea with that goal? Luffy provides these answers.
海賊王になる。海賊王に？うん。本気ですか？本気。っていうか、ルフィさん海賊だったんですか？ああ。無理。絶対無理。無理に決まってます。この大海賊時代の頂点に立つなんてできるわけないですよ。無理。どうして殴るんですか？なんとなくだ。でもいや、慣れてるから。できるかどうかじゃない。え？なりたいからなるんだ。え
？Seem more than obsessed with this king of the pirates business. Is there some kind of story behind it, or any kind of reason at all?
No reason. It's just...
Just what?
I promised someone a while back. I swore that I would gather a crew, find the world's greatest treasure, and become king of the pirates.
Luffy just wants to. The only rationale that Luffy offers surrounding his desire to become king of the pirates and find the One Piece is a promise that he made. The promise that he made is related to a dream passed down to him from Shanks, a promise about fulfilling not a destiny but a desire. Shanks was one of the only people to show him love when Luffy was young, to guide and protect him. He was also someone who inspired him for all that he was as a pirate, with a life that he could not take part in because he was too young and too weak. So out of a stubborn resistance, he promised not just to be a pirate, but to be king of the pirates. And to be quite honest, that is wishful thinking. It doesn't make sense for Luffy to want that dream. No one's forcing him to do it, and there honestly doesn't even seem to be that much that he could gain from seeking it. His father and grandfather were well established in their respective fields, a revolutionary, a vice admiral. If he wanted, he could have chosen a life climbing a ladder that had already been laid out for him, but he chose differently. And for him, this isn't news. He's aware of all the things that are against him, but he chooses his path anyway, not because it's easier and not because he'll have more, but because it's the one he chooses that's best for him. And that reasoning is good enough. Lives can be spent in many ways, but they're measured best in how well they're spent. So for Luffy to choose the King of the Pirates as his dream, and the way that he spends his life, whether he loses everything he has in the process, is a good enough dream, and because he wants to, is a good enough reason as long as he does it to the best of his ability and with all of his strength. Compared to other protagonists, Luffy's reason for seeking greatness is rather weak, but what is strong is his resolve. Luffy's willing to battle the whole world, to become an enemy of the world's authorities just to see it realized. You see, if there's any dream worth fighting for, it might as well be your own. That is what is so remarkable about him. He's wagering everything in his life for a dream that will certainly cause him grief and pain before it's realized, when he doesn't even have a good reason for seeking it, or any guarantee it will come to fruition. How ridiculous, how powerful, how foolish, how awesome is Luffy's resolve. It takes some years to find the will to move away from home, or start a new job, or just go to the gym for some people. But Luffy spends every day seeking a dream that doesn't make sense, and that is near impossible, just because he wants to. And yes, wanting to is enough. When that want comes from the deepest part of your heart, when whatever love or hope you've tied to it is your most sacred treasure. When this is true, it doesn't have to make sense to the world when it makes sense to you.